The open road is calling, it's got stories to tell. I've got a few of my own flowing from a deeper well. The cherry blossoms blooming, shimmering clouds, pink and white, and I'm leaving the old things behind.
Welcome to the Midlife Capers Podcast. I'm your host, Kara Highsmith. In each episode, we will hear from people, everyday friends and neighbors kinds of people, who have taken on some sort of adventure in midlife. Maybe it's a creative project where they explore a previously hidden talent. It might be pulling up stakes and moving to a new, unexpected location just because. It could be changing the way they show up in the world. The point is, they are doing something that pushes them outside their comfort zones, responding to those internal nudges, allowing themselves and their lives to take a different shape than they imagined. I hope you will find their stories inspiring, perhaps motivating, and keep coming back as we have new conversations. Welcome back to the Midlife Capers Podcast. My guest today is Melissa Corbin. She is a longtime friend from college and has had her own adventures that I am going to be excited to catch up on and share with you. And as I learn about what's been happening with her since the last time we talked. So, Melissa, welcome to the program. And
Oh,
I appreciate you doing this for me.
thank you, Kara. I guess this is going to be as organic as it gets because we haven't really talked by phone or video.
No,
Uh,
just a
we
few little
were
check-ins on social media here and there. Yeah.
so. All right, folks, you're going to hear it as it goes down.
I'll edit if we get too far off the
Yeah,
rails, but
no, it's quite
it's
all
going to
right.
be yeah. So, the thing that I've been asking everyone to get the ball rolling, and it's especially relevant for our conversation, is what did life look like for you before 50?
Oh gosh. Well, um, let's take it in little sections. But
Okay.
in fact, I'm writing about this very subject today for a publication. But I married. We were peas and carrots until we weren't.
Yeah.
But the final decree was at the beginning of 2019, and of course, you realize that was on the heels of the pandemic and lockdown and all of that.
Mhm.
So I had my what they call your glow up right in the
Uh-huh.
middle of lockdown. It didn't
Yeah.
stop me, but leading up to that time, my degree is in social work.
Mhm.
um, but I went on to amass a career's worth of experiences, and at the time, it wasn't by design, but looking back, every piece had its fit, like where
Mhm.
it was supposed to go, it happened. So it was really easy for me to make sense of where I'm at now with probably 10 years left in my career. But so I'm in a much happier space. I feel better about myself than ever, like in my 40s,
Mhm.
because I was in a bad marriage.
Yeah. And so let's get into a little bit more specifics about what
Yeah,
does life look like now with, after
sure,
the,
sure.
yeah.
Well, I started traveling as kind of an escape from my
Mhm.
marriage. That wasn't the sole purpose. It was kind of like an icing on the cake kind of thing, because I had been travel and food writing since 2012-ish, I guess. Um,
So how
but
did you make the jump from social work
mm,
to that? That's an interesting skip
oh,
along a
yeah,
different path.
so I was in social work for about 10 years. When 9/11 happened, the Bush era administration was cutting a lot of funding, kind of like what we're seeing now, maybe not to this degree. But I thought, I can't make a career out of this and not lose my mind. So
Yeah.
I ended up in sales. I joke, social work and sales has very similar goals and tasks. So, for example, while I'm not selling children, I was an adoption counselor for a long while.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
writing their brand, if you want
Yeah.
to talk in marketing, just telling this kid's life story for pre-adoptive families.
Mm-hmm.
So I took those interview skills
Yeah.
and placed them into the sales industry, and lo and behold, I was a natural at it. Ended up selling advertising for years. When the food scene started kind of exploding in Nashville, I had just turned 40, but I knew if I was going to do something on my own, I was 40, ageism is real. If I was going to do something, it was shit or get off the pot, right?
Yeah.
So I started writing content. Mind you, at that time, Facebook was also the only social media
Yeah.
platform to communicate with. And so I was writing content to connect farms and chefs for social media, but also for a sourcing component where these chefs were coming to me to find out where the best mushroom guy is, for example. Because back then there wasn't a lot of that in this area.
Oh.
But long story short, to get to the travel piece of it, I got invited on a press trip to cover the cranberry harvest up in Wisconsin for the Tennessean.
Okay.
And that was my first assigned travel gig.
Mm-hmm.
And that started snowballing. And at the same time, like all of these press trips were happening. I don't even really do press trips like in the traditional sense anymore. I do research trips, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
not where they load you all up in a van and take you out to this remote location or anything.
Okay.
That travel really, really gave me a place to find who I was outside of that marriage. It gave me peace and quiet while I was on the road. So that when it was time for me to recognize that I was in the situation I was in, um, I wouldn't count myself the strongest person in the world back then, but it definitely gave me a foundation to spring from. hmm
Yeah.
So nowadays, to answer your question, um, I still do some travel and food writing, but my main bread and butter these days is PR and branding consulting for small businesses and nonprofits primarily.
Okay.
All of these things is coming to fruition, and I feel like the last 10 years of my life is going to look an awful lot like this, where I wake up in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, I answer my emails, I may get a little bit of writing done, but by
Mm-hmm.
11 or 12, I'm either doing something like this
Uh-huh.
or I'm making client calls, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
after I get off the phone with you, I'll be driving back into Nashville for a whiskey dinner for a Women's Month. It's by Happenstance Whiskey, which is
Okay.
a women-led distillery.
Yeah.
So
That sounds great to me.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
not all party, but it's fun.
There really does seem to be kind of a through line and a flow from one thing to another uh,
Yes.
that is really just about kind of saying yes to the next thing.
I look at my life's work and my professional life as very much the same way I would write an outline for a story, where there is clear like benchmarks of my career, and then under it are the subheadings of what really went down to get me to that next level.
Yeah. And this is I kind of hesitate to ask this because it may seem kind of obvious, but did you ever imagine that you would be able to piece all of these different things together and end up
Mm.
in an entirely different spot from where you were? Because I think about myself. I started out at Belmont with a double major in marketing and economics. End of my junior year, I woke up and I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do business. What do I do? And I had a professor, a lit professor, who identified something that I had kind of missed, which was that I'd been taking literature classes every chance I got.
Yeah,
And
right.
and she said, "Why don't you
Please tell me it was Dr. Monteverde.
Oh, it is. It
Oh
absolutely
my
is.
God, I
Yeah.
loved her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
We're
really
still,
attribute her as part of the reason why I got into the writing part of my career. So,
well, yeah, yeah. And she,
yeah.
so I had gone to her and I was just like, yeah, I don't know what to do now. I definitely know I don't want to do business. And she said, why don't you come go with me to England to do a study abroad this summer and then see how you feel? Maybe you can change your
Hmm.
major to English. And I was like, well, I mean,
Who says no to that?
right. And I said yes. And I said yes. And I said yes. If you look back over, and you've already kind of alluded to this a little bit, that if you look back over the these years of adulthood where you're pursuing education and then career and that kind of thing, how each step, while it may not have made sense in the moment, it definitely made
Mm,
sense in how it all unfolds.
well, as I was getting really frustrated, that I couldn't get this one editor to give me the time of day, and it was just I was new. Eh,
Mhm.
in writing, you have to have a very thick skin because nobody likes to be told their baby's ugly. There's gonna be messes that you're gonna have to clean up. I was told for a good 5 years until now, Melissa, you really should be doing some PR. You're a natural at it. You know what you're doing. Quit second guessing yourself. But it wasn't until about, it was about 2 years this month, maybe a year and a half. Someone that I trust in the industry was like, Melissa, you've got to quit worrying about the editors that you will lose because you're doing PR, because sometimes that can be considered a conflict of interest.
Oh,
I
yeah.
make sure that I don't represent brands or industries that I may be writing for. So
Yeah.
it's a dance that you have to take. But so I was just kind of like on the DL for a while representing this chef that I still keep in contact with, but I hadn't designed a website. I didn't have a dedicated email address, none of
Mhm.
that hoopla that they tell you when you're building a brand, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until probably 6 months ago that I was saying in public that this is what I was doing.
Yeah.
So yes, things fell in line. Was it a straight line? No, it never is.
No, tons of
And
face in life.
and it's predominantly a woman issue because we've
Yeah.
been groomed all our life to be smaller than we are and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and we're afraid that we're not going to be perfect. But anytime I question, like, is that going to sound like a bitch or is that just me being me? I
Mhm.
think, what would a man say in this instance?
Yeah.
And at 9 times out of 10, it's the bitchy thing, right?
Mhm.
So I say the bitchy thing. Life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say though that I have, yes, it is true that I think more women are plagued with that um, fear of
The
imposter,
imposter syndrome.
yeah, imposter syndrome, or
Mhm.
just always making yourself small. But I do have, I mean, a number of my clients are older men who are in retirement and just for the first time saying, you know what, I don't have anything else going on. I don't have any other expectations of me. Let me see what, you know, like one client in particular, he had this idea for a novel that after he shared it with me, I was like, no, this is a novel series.
Mhm.
We can't cram all of this into one book. It's just not,
Mhm.
it's not a realistic thing. Um, but he had carried that idea around for probably 40 years
Mhm.
and never gave himself or life just never made room for him to indulge what he would consider an indulgence in
Mhm.
something creative. And I think yes, definitely more women, but I think just generally in that creative realm, anything that is not a clearly commodifiable
This
pursue.
thing I got to sell, this widget, if it's
Yeah,
something that you have to like dream up and make and then sell, it's a
yeah.
whole different
If
subject.
if it's if
Yeah.
it's if it's not the standard, lawyer, doctor, accountant kind of path that is going to make money, that's like, we went to
Yeah.
a liberal arts college, and it's kind of like, well, what do you do with an English major? And that, it's a long-standing
You put her in
joke
the
that,
classroom or the newsroom is what you do.
right. Well, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
a long-standing joke that you really can't do anything with an English major. But the
Mhm.
reality is the field is wide open for something like
Mhm.
that. You just have It's just not a clear path, and you have to figure out how to take your passions and your skills and gifts and and create your own career.
Well, yeah, and but I think that those philosophies could definitely be placed in someone that is not necessarily in a creative field, as far as giving them the freedom to choose how they are in their own workplace or
Mhm.
professional life, and
Yeah.
but also, I mean, look at Grandma Moses. When did she start painting?
Oh,
But,
yeah.
you look at all these people that their second career came much
Yeah.
later in life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the point of this podcast, is to profile people who are um looking at where they are in midlife, and either they don't like where they are, it's not working for them anymore, or things are starting to slow down a little bit, and they
Mhm.
have the freedom to expand
Yep,
how they see themselves.
yep. Uh, I as I look at this last chapter of my career, and every time I hear myself say that, I'm like, "What in the world's wrong with you? It's not your last chapter." But before I start looking at retiring,
Yeah.
it has given me a full circle feeling to my career that,
Mhm.
you keep on honing in on this, make it
Yeah.
make sense, and, how did we get from this
Yeah.
spot to the next?
Yeah.
For people that think linear, I can understand why that would be a
Yeah.
hard thing to grasp, but, there's 100 million different cliches talking about, failure's not failure, it's
Mhm.
just your next
Yeah.
closest step to a win, but isn't that kind of the thing about life? That's what keeps us up in the mornings?
Well, in my mind, it is pretty much the purpose of life, is
Yeah.
to keep, to learn from where you've been, carry that forward.
Mhm.
Don't carry the burden of it, but carry the lesson, and keep moving toward the next thing, and you're accumulating all of this experience and wisdom and insight that helps you for the next phase. And if you had come to that phase before you had traveled this path and gleaned what were supposed to, you wouldn't have been equipped for it. And so,
Mhm.
I really do feel like things unfold in the time they're supposed to.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I I lost my mother in 23 no, 21, and then my ex-husband actually took his own life in 23.
Oh, well.
Um, and I think about grief in, the way you just described.
Mhm.
I can remember before anyone, like, really close to me had died, in my head, I was almost cavalier about someone else's loss, not because I didn't care about them. It's just I guess I couldn't fathom it.
Yeah.
And I learned after my mother's death, we're not supposed to know what this is like. It's the people that have gone before us that are waiting with their arms open in times of grief. I think some
Yeah.
of that same sentiment could be applied to what we're talking about here as far as our
Oh,
career
sure.
goes. Because if we set out a goal when we first graduated college, girl, I would not be living the life I am now, and I would be
Yeah.
miserable.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Well, I mean, just from the 3 years that I invested in the study that was not going to lead to the career I was supposed to pursue. At the same time, everything I learned in those 3 years has come into play in some way. I I double major in marketing and economics. The economics portion taught me a lot about how to run a business so
Hmm.
that I mean I still make mistakes. but
We all do. That's
but
what a good accountant's
when you don't
for.
have much when you don't have much to work with, you're gonna really flub how you use your resources at times just because it's harder to manage them. But um but I learned things about actually operating a business. But I also, under the marketing umbrella, uh, all of that has really come into play as I work with my clients. Um, as far as like an understanding of how people connect to information and receive messaging um, and how to write copy that is going to capture someone's attention. All of those
Hmm.
kinds of things have really helped me in, in different aspects of the many hats I wear for a client. So, I don't, while didn't ultimately lead to a specific career, that education was important. And so it goes back to what I was saying before about the things you carry forward.
That's right. Your foundation is important.
Yeah.
It's very important. Um, that that's
Eh,
not much else you can say about that. As long as
Sure.
you've got a
Yeah.
firm foundation, you can do a multitude of things.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Hmm.
because you are acquiring skills and knowledge that
That's right.
can equip you for tacking, as is necessary because, life's going to, like you say, you're not going to know what's coming at you and
Hmm.
you're not supposed to know. But if you are equipped with the right kinds of skills, you can
To
tack and
navigate.
adjust as
That's
necessary.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, is there, uh, is there anything that you would change about your process, or does it all come under that umbrella of, everything is a lesson learned that I could take with me?
Yeah. I think as far as my education goes, had I to do it, you had like 40 hours left on your bachelor's.
Uh-huh.
I have about 40 hours left on my performance degree. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
the 5-year plan as well.
Yeah.
I changed my major from music to social work my junior year.
That's
And
right. I thought I remembered you being a music major at
yeah,
some point.
yeah, I still can belt out a tune from time to time. But had I to do it over again, I'll never forget one of, my classes, they were talking about language and how Nashville is being primed to be, a lot of Latinas are gonna be moving into Nashville. I'm like,
Uh,
"There's no way," because if you remember back then, I mean, Nashville was as white bread and mayonnaise as you could get.
yeah.
But, had I to do it over again, I would have taken Spanish as my minor. I'm
Yeah.
on Duolingo right now. One of my best friends happens to be a Mexican woman, and she's helping me, but it's hard for me to retain it with this 54-year-old
Yeah.
brain than it would have been and been able to apply it, in my
Yeah.
20s. So if I had anything to do over again, it would probably be that in my professional life. But as far as going to, say, a marketing school or something like that, there's no way in hell I could have learned the things that I've learned along the way in
Yeah.
school. In my personal life, people ask me about my marriage, would I do it over again? I mean, it's kind of like asking, a country music artist or a rapper, would you have gone through that struggle just to have this perfect line?
Yeah.
Um, in their song.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I would have had better sense knowing what I know now, but I'm happy with who I am now, so
Yeah.
do it. I want to go through that script. And you know that in my marriage, there was a lot of good times. So I'd probably do it over again. But I don't have to do it again.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the thing is, like I keep saying, carry forward the lesson, not the burden,
Yeah, yeah. And that takes a lot of doings to
It-
not
yeah.
let that be your identity. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. No, it
Yeah.
really does. Yeah. And especially since there are so many stigmas that are still attached to the kinds of personal what you might call mistakes, or what they might call mistakes, that are part of the learning process of being a human. Um, and so it can be hard to shed that stuff. I mean, I was a single mom,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in the buckle of the Bible Belt,
Yep. Yep.
there was a lot of stigma.
You were a harlot.
I was, and I was relatively
Please no, I don't think that, but
No,
I
but
remember
I was
those
relatively
days.
unapologetic for it as well, because I didn't go and marry the father just because that was
Yeah.
what you do,
That's right.
and it was that was its own thing that we won't get into, but
Oh, we can.
nah, not here. We can do that offline. But he it was it was one of those things that I did, even though I say I was relatively unapologetic for it. I didn't. I just lived my life as a single mother and did the best I could. But I certainly had moments where I was like, well, am I obligated to endure this particular struggle
Oh, right.
because
Is this
the
my lot in life?
because
Yeah.
I didn't do it the right way.
Yeah.
Do I just have to suck it up and deal with this?
That's just shame is what
and
that is.
it is, and it's something that I carried forward, really, almost until, I mean, I still see it in different parts where I'm like, it's almost like hardship becomes a badge of honor at some point when you go
I know
through.
what you mean.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like, I do everything the hard way. Do I have to do everything the hard way? Probably not. There are some things that there's just no way around it, but I probably make things way harder on myself because of some crazy notion that if I had followed certain rules, then the path would have been smoother. And I think that that's
There's no guarantee of that, though.
well, no, there's not. And it's all
Mhm.
craziness that comes from the various messages and stigmas that that are heaped onto the expectations for how you're supposed to do things. And I think that really anyone who is who has a creative core to themselves, and when I say creative, I don't just mean somebody who's going to create a work of art. I think if you are creating anything, whether it's a resource for someone to use, or an experience for someone to have, or actual arts, books, music, paintings, whatever. If you're creating, you're creative. And so, but because that can be a somewhat nebulous thing, we like to put labels on things, and we like to have narrow definitions because it's easier to understand um, on the fly. To really understand what someone's doing when it's a creative pursuit, it requires that you take time to listen and have someone
Mhm.
explain what they're trying to accomplish. And so, the anything in the creative endeavor, I think it's easy to fall under the burden of other expectations. And
Yeah, and you know what? You haven't really said this, but I'm gonna say the hard thing.
uh
Creatives, we have a horrible relationship with our money. Um, where it's hard to put a price on what we've created.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I work with, especially if my client is a creative, like the chef that I was
Uh-huh.
working with, um, and I tell this to myself and like my peers in the writing world. You have to treat it as a business. It is not, yes, it's a craft, but if it's just a craft, you need to go get another job somewhere. You have to treat
Yeah.
this as a
Let it be a hobby
business.
and just, yeah.
Yeah, and know your worth and
Yeah.
don't be afraid to ask for that, whatever that dollar sign is on that.
Some of the best guidance I ever got it was from a friend and a colleague, a man that I worked on several projects with. He said when I was really picking up more clients and realizing that I was taking on more work than the compensation, and I couldn't balance those and do the kind of work that the quality of work that wanted to deliver on the fee that I was collecting. It just,
Were
when
you
when
setting your fee off of what you knew you had to have for your bills, or were you setting your
well,
fee off of what the market would bear?
neither.
Mhm.
I was setting my fee based on what I thought they could afford.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh, gotcha.
and and half the time, if you broke it down by the hour, I was getting about $6 or $7 an hour, which is
Yeah, it
insane.
happens.
And so what he told me, he said, you have to charge by the life, not by the hour. Meaning you charge for all of the experience and knowledge and wisdom that you've
That's right.
accumulated and that you're bringing to the table, rather than just some arbitrary hourly rate, because that's never going to be commensurate with what you're offering to this client that they're not going to be able to get somewhere else. And then they're not going to be able to deliver for themselves. They're hiring you
Well,
because they can't do it. It took a long time of that happening over and over again before I started to set boundaries, because as a self employed person, it's very easy to let it all bleed over into every moment of every day.
yes.
And so learning how to set boundaries and when to shut off the valve of access that a client has in a day
Yes.
is
I
and I
agree
still
with
and I
that.
still don't do well, but I'm better at it. Yeah. And this is a great conversation to have because as people venture into trying something that's outside of their wheelhouse, outside of maybe the career path that they've had, understanding that this is one of the struggles you'll encounter, and learning how to avoid mistakes in it is really valuable to people. So,
Mm,
what's the greatest takeaway that you have from this experience of
of just
reinventing
getting
yourself?
up and doing it. Mm.
Well, just of reinventing yourself, of reaching the end of something and being open to going in a different direction.
Yep. Um, I say this all the time. Fear is an anger-based emotion. And so if you look at that in a professional sense and you're afraid to take that leap, I guarantee you what's holding you from taking that leap is some sort of unresolved anger. For me, it was some resentment over how it all went down when I started out on my own.
Yeah.
That happened alongside of my marriage and whatnot. But you have that whole thing around anger. People like to scapegoat that name or that word to mean that that's something bad, but it's a motivating emotion. So
Yes.
when you're afraid of something, look inward to try to locate where it's rooted. And 9
Yeah.
times out of 10, it's going to be some sort of unresolved anger. The
Yeah.
other thing, the takeaway from I am living proof that you do not have to have someone supporting you to realize your full potential. Now, when I say supporting, I mean financially. You
Sure.
always have to have some sort of circle of support.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you would say is some kind of advice or whatever that you would offer to someone who is feeling a nudge for some kind of a new adventure or reinvention? You
Surround yourself with people, groups, organizations that are in that field and become a sponge. You don't know everything. I mean, I do. No. I'm I'm joking.
know.
Uh, but if you're feeling that nudge, um, maybe not quit your job without having one because that's exactly what I did. But I'm kind of glad I did.
Yeah.
But go take an audit a class or something
Mhm.
in that field. I
Yeah.
learned how to write my first pitch at the Porch Writers Collective, and it was I don't know how much I spent for that class. It wasn't much. It was like $75 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was the best $75 that I ever spent because
Yeah.
it ripped the Band-Aid off of me going, "I've never pitched before."
For me and the people I'm kind of targeting, it may not be a whole new career for them. It may just be doing something that pushes them out of their comfort zone. And that could look a million different ways. The whole idea is to have conversations with people who in midlife are reevaluating some aspect of how they show up in their lives,
Mhm.
whether it's professionally, um, creatively, or relationally. It could be a health thing. It could, there are a lot of different ways that um, that people are experiencing this, but I think that there's a whole, I'm finding people to talk to about these things, but there's a world of people out there who feel that nudge to do something, but or are, whether they feel restricted by circumstance or they're just restricting themselves because of fear or something like that. Um, those are the people I want to speak to through these conversations so that, someone out there is going to be in a similar situation or see themselves
Yeah.
in a situation in some way and be like, oh, well, that gives me some idea about how maybe I can chase this as well.
Also, little practices like pick up a book and read every day. It doesn't have to be anything.
Mhm.
It could be a magazine. I don't care.
Mhm.
Pick up something that you're not like sitting here doom scrolling because we
Yeah.
all have that, right? But just pick up a book and read. And dependent upon what that thing is, whether it's professional or personal, uh, as far as taking that leap at this point in our life, we will never get to be young again, but we sure as hell can be weird for the rest of our life.
I
And
like that.
what some may consider weird is your,
Yeah.
Xanadu or whatever.
Right.
I
Right.
hope that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it absolutely does. And, what one person calls weird, another person calls just being authentically me,
Yeah, that's
and so,
right.
and I think that really is a great takeaway from, these experiences that we're having is just, honoring your journey and where you are in it and, and letting your truth be true. Yeah, for you. Yeah.
There's something that we didn't really talk about that when we talk about like dreaming big and doing the weird thing. And I want to just acknowledge that this is a very privileged conversation that we're having. Not everybody has the means or the support network and all of that kind of thing. But one thing I learned very early on in my career as a social worker that people that are marginalized, for example, have not necessarily been given the freedom to dream. Um,
Yeah.
so, just putting a bowl of beans on the table, is
Yeah.
they're their accomplishment for the day. So in a more general sense, I think that's why I was saying read a book or something like that.
Oh,
It doesn't matter where your lot in life is, to give yourself the permission to dream outside of the scope of what you think is reality. Every one of us can do it.
yeah.
It's different levels, obviously, of freedom to do so, dependent upon
Yeah.
what your lot in life is. But I want to make sure that I clarify that I'm aware that this is coming from a place of true privilege. You
No,
know,
absolutely. And that's part of why I am intentionally keeping the topics up here broad, because I want people to understand that it isn't just about, oh, well, you're independently wealthy, or you have some level of status to be able to pursue this. It can happen for anybody for any
uh,
reason, because it's a simple step outside your comfort zone to imagine that you could be something a little bit more than what you are right now. And
uh,
there there was a ministry in LA. I think they're still in operation, and they were called the Dream Center. It was they specifically ministered to people who were homeless for various reasons, runaways. They had an addiction recovery program, and the reason they called it the Dream Center is because they recognized the fact that when you're in this state of just survival,
survival.
no
Hmm.
one ever asks you what your dream is, because that feels so inaccessible. And so
Uh-huh.
their goal was to provide the basic needs of life to help them get back on their feet and get some stability, so then they could actually open themselves up to what a dream could be for them. And
Uh-huh.
that really, and it can sound so big when you are confined to survival mode. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because so many people out there are in that space. But
Uh-huh.
I think that one of the things that can help you move forward out of that space is
Excuse me.
considering that that there's a possibility that it might look different at some point, and being open to examining how that could come and where it could come from. And so that is really the crux of my goal for all of this, is to give people that light at the end of the tunnel that isn't actually an oncoming train, you know?
Right, right, right. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah. But thank
It's
you
been a
for,
pleasure.
yes, it's been great to catching up with you. And thanks so much for being a part of this. And we will stay in touch.
All right, sugar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna do something new. I'm gonna turn these wheels in the winds, flying through the endless blue, finding my own way, drinking from new springs, from the mountains high to the valleys low.